Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. The Bacon and Egg Show, episode 75. Happy 75th, Jay.
Happy 75th. Yeah. Woo.
February 23rd, 2022. Sorry, I guess we're a day late on the whole 2/22/22 bit, but we're here the 23rd. So good morning. What do we got going on? Where do you want to start, Jay? I think we both, before today's show, kind of were like, oh, this would be an interesting place to kick things off.
Yeah, man.
Our guy, the leader of the Texas women's basketball team, the Lady Longhorns, Vic, he had some interesting words this week that were kind of making the rounds on social media. This may be the first time we've ever led off the show with women's basketball talk, but I think this was something that, as we've attended plenty of men's basketball games this year, and also various other sports around the 40 acres for decades, definitely caught my attention. What did Vic say that also caught your attention as well? Because I know we were both kind of on the same wavelength with this before the show.
Yeah, Coach Vic Schaefer, number 11 ranked women's basketball team. They play a pretty good brand of basketball, to be honest. They're actually fun to watch. They're a good team. They average like basically the same amount of points as the men's team does. They shoot they shoot almost exactly the same from the field as the men's team does.
That's not a compliment, but
but if we're talking about
like for like, I mean, it's
yeah, exactly. But the point is the men's basketball team has drawn a pretty good crowd, and the women's team is only averaging about 2,500 people a game, and Vic Schaefer's not really happy with that. He's pretty upset that he went from, when you go from Mississippi State, where what else is there to do in Starkville?
Stark Vegas, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're averaging 8,500 people a game there when he was there, but because it was it was the same brand of basketball, it's a good brand of basketball, fun to watch. And you come here and it's Austin and it's 2,500, and Schaefer's not happy about it, man. He's frustrated for himself. He's frustrated mostly for his players, and he thinks that his players deserve better. Kerry, I don't necessarily disagree with him, but to be fair, I think that the men's team is just now getting around to people are finally starting to buy into basketball in this town, and I think it's going to just take a little bit of time for the women's team to catch up. What were your feelings on this? And Schaefer obviously sticking up for his program here,
of course,
and maybe even taking a subtle shot at his athletic director for the promotion or lack thereof promotion of his team.
All good points. I think you're right on with all of that. I think for me, my first kind of thought was like, Vic, it's Texas. Like was there anything about this that was surprising? He's from Texas. I mean, he's an A&M guy. Like, were you not aware of what, like, kind of how things work around here? I think the Irwin Center is a problem. I think as we're looking forward to Monday night to just close the doors, knock that thing down. Like, there's a lot of like different variables here. I mean, I think you're absolutely right that the men's basketball team is a good kind of canary in the coal mine, if you want to call it that, in terms of like crowd engagement. Like, people are just starting to come around. That we're going to talk about this Tech game, but the environment in there, I think, Tech fans obviously had a lot to do with that. I've never been in an atmosphere like that for a Texas basketball game. You guys were at the Kansas game. You can speak towards how the atmosphere was in there for the KU game. I think the Baylor game Monday night, the finale at the Irwin Center, is going to be rowdy. I think I think the promotion, I think the team being pretty good, honestly. Like, I know we have our complaints about it, but it's a top 20 team. I think the team being decent is driving that from men's side at least. And I think if Vic is able to sustain success, which so far he has, and I think I do also agree that there could probably be a bit more promotion from the athletic department. I do also think the arena is a joke. I think that it's not an arena that lends itself to smaller crowds and having a good environment. I hope the Moody Center changes that to where if you do have a crowd of 4,000, it feels better than it does at the Irwin Center. And I think when people have a better environment, even if it's a smaller crowd, they're going to be more willing to come back. They're going to be more willing to bring somebody to a game. The students are going to be more willing to go. I mean, but he's not wrong. Like I completely agree with him. And he says like, there's no excuses for it. I mean, there's really not. Like, there's no excuses, but it is also like, it is what it is. It's a city where there's a lot to do. You're asking students, in the same week, you've got 3 baseball games, you've got top ranked, like tennis programs trying to draw people in. You've got men's basketball, women's basketball. You've got all the other things at Austin, Texas, which minus today with this BS cold front that's come through, but like you've got all the outdoor stuff. You've got Austin FC kicking off this weekend. There's a lot to do. And is Vic Schaefer going to have consistently sold out crowds at the Moody Center on a night to night basis? Probably not. When the move to the SEC, some big time programs come in, A&M obviously will draw a crowd. LSU will probably do that. Like, that'll be different. And that'll be to the point of what the men's basketball team has been. You're going to get big crowds for the big games. You're playing Houston Baptist, you're probably not going to have that big of a crowd. That's the reality of University of Texas athletics in this city.
Yeah,
the sad part is this. Well, just real quick. The sad part about that is that could be what drives away a great coach like Schaefer. If there's an opportunity to go to a place that lives and breathes that kind of stuff and like he can win and all those things, that could be the difference. What kind of support am I getting here versus what I could get there?
I agree. I mean, he left that to come here. He left that environment at Mississippi State to come to Texas, and he knew what he was getting into. Vic Schaefer's a very intelligent man. He knew exactly the type of environment that he was coming into. I honestly do feel like, that this is more of a push. Yeah, like, reminding the fans, sticking up for his players, reminding the fans, hey, we're here too. But I do think that this is a cry for help from the athletic department to help promote this good brand of basketball that he's pushing at this point.
Yeah.
And I do think that the move to the Moody Center is going to make a difference. I can't wait until they knock down that piss and popcorn smelling arena. It's just like, nobody is going to be sad that they knocked that place down. It's a garbage arena. It's long overdue for the quality, for the amount of money that's on this campus. It's long overdue.
Popcorn Center. That's great.
Yeah,
how did that just make the show? Like,
I don't know.
2 home games left, I guess, this season, and we just got to that.
Yeah, the P&P Center, but
PPC.
God. But honestly, I think, if you win like he's doing right now, and like if you win consistently, that's the only way that this is going to happen. Is you win, you hang some banners up, and you just keep at it. You keep your head down if you're the women's basketball coach at the University of Texas, and you just do your job. And you got to hope that people, with some help from the athletic department and some promotion, that you can get to where you want to be. It's a good brand of basketball. It's not your typical just like
fundamentals.
There's a knock on women's basketball, and a lot more people have come around to women's basketball recently, with good reason, because I think that as the women's game has evolved and more women are playing and getting more opportunities to play and want to play, those athletes are playing basketball. the quality of the game is improving, and we're seeing that. And I just think it's going to take a little bit of time for it to catch up in Austin to where Vic Schaefer's used to it being, and like you said, in Stark Vegas, where there's nothing else to do but support a women's basketball team that's winning national championships. You know, if he wins, I have a feeling it'll get there, but you got to win.
It's going to take
Vic,
time.
You knew that coming in. So yeah, but that's it. Good.
He's
on
a
him
pretty
for
savvy
showing up.
guy about what buttons to push. And I agree. I think this is kind of a like, hey, CDC, you know, throw me a bone here kind of thing.
Yeah,
like, I think
you got Chris Beard throwing darties at the tower, and what do you have? How are you helping Vic Schaefer out promote his program? You know, like, are you doing things are you giving away 600 Whataburger chicken biscuits to to students that show up, you know, for the women's games like you are the men's games? I haven't heard anything about that. Not saying that it hasn't happened, but are you doing those things to draw students, I saw, before we wrap this up, I saw on Twitter, somebody was replying to the Vic Schaefer comments and was saying, like, well, it has something to do with whatever they were saying. And a female student said, I've been to every single game. Like, the people that are there are into it, you know. And she was saying how she's been to every single game. The crowd that's there is into what's going on the court. But you just got to get more people there and create that environment. So hopefully they can find a way to do that. And winning is the best medicine in Austin for any sport. If you ain't winning, nobody's showing up, period. Doesn't matter who you are.
If you're not going to win and you want to drive crowd engagement, I think the trick, I mean, even if you want to win and if you are winning, I think having breakdancing sessions during timeouts, like what we saw at the Irwin Center. Yeah, this is the perfect segue to get into the men's basketball team. That's the most memorable thing for me coming out of the Irwin Center and the loss against Tech was, I mean, we had corgi races, we had balloon snakes dropping from the ceiling before tip, and, you know, employees risking life and limb to make sure that they didn't get stuck in the rafters. That was exciting.
I couldn't believe that. I couldn't stare at it, man. And for those of you,
we almost had an Owen Hart moment in the Irwin Center before tip.
It was bad. I mean, they're sitting up there. They drop the snake looking balloons, the long balloons for people to wave and stuff. These guys got off.
Some got stuck.
Some got stuck on some rafters that have no rails on them. These guys,
because it's the Irwin Center,
right? They climbed off of the walkway with rails onto the rafter with no protection holding them there to kick them off. And I'm sitting there watching like, oh my God, he's gonna fall. But go ahead. What you were saying?
Oh no, I was just gonna. I mean, that's what CDC needs to get more breakdancing and more corgi races and stuff going at the women's games to get.
The 7, 8-year-old white kids doing breakdancing moves. And then Texas Tech fans let them have it too.
Well, if there was anything that we were able to gather from 70% of the upper deck being Tech fans, is that they all came down from the high plains to see the corgi races and the breakdancing. It had nothing to do with Chris Beard or basketball or anything. So okay. Since we last recorded, so Texas is still ranked number 20 in the AP. I'd say that's probably about right, given what we've seen. You know, they've been navigating this, you know, stretch here that we've been talking about all season. Mixed bag, some pretty good, some good, some okay, some pretty bad. You know, so I don't know if it's anything that's been too shocking or anything that really gets us through this run saying now we know who this team is. This has been the story all season. Gutsy win at Oklahoma. Kind of from just following it, I wasn't able to watch it minute by minute, but it looked like kind of let that one slip a little bit before pulling it out in OT. And then the Tech loss at home. As we were walking out of the Irwin Center, we have a lot of stuff to gripe about, I guess, with the team and kind of how some decisions and stuff like that. But honestly, Tech just straight beat Texas. Like you can't complain about the refs. There's nothing that like you can kind of take from the outside and say, oh, well, you know, let's blame it on that. Tech just showed up and won. That second half of the second half, They were much more aggressive. Texas was in the bonus early in that second half and never shot a free throw again after that. I think I might be wrong on that. I think Timmy Allen had those two late to kind of keep it within range a little bit there. But they just completely lost all aggression towards Tech. And there was a moment there midway through the second half where I turned to you and I said, look at this lineup out on the court. And this was right after Texas I think we're down 7, fought back to take a lead. I think it was a 1-point lead for Texas, timeout, and then Beard rolls out with a lineup of, who is it? Febris, Cunningham, Askew, Disu,
and maybe Jones or Carr, one of the guards. Ramey.
No, it wasn't even one. Oh, but it was like, you just got the momentum back. You just clawed back to take this lead, and you're basically going to bring in what amounts to your second string at this point to try to manage this momentum. And he said it after the Baylor game. This team doesn't know how to handle success. That was a moment to try to handle some success. Does the team not know how to handle success, or is Beard not handling game management in specific situations correctly? I mean, I don't know. That's a chicken or the egg kind of thing. But that's what, I mean, Mark Adams coached up Tech, and they were more aggressive down the stretch, and they came into Austin and got a big win in an insane environment. It felt 50-50, if not more than that. Maybe it's because we were surrounded by Tech fans, but I mean, credit to Tech. That's all I mean.
Yeah.
They came into Austin and just straight beat the Longhorns. And there's nothing I don't know what else to add about that.
Here's the deal.
That we haven't already seen, you know?
Yeah. Here's the deal. And this goes back way farther than just the Tech game over the weekend. This team should have been led by Marcus Carr and Timmy Allen. Those guys should have been the guys from the jump. And when you lose a guy like Trey Mitchell, who now we're finding out, Trey Mitchell's left the program. For those of you that aren't aware, he's not with the team right now.
So this has gone beyond the leave of absence and just he has left the program.
I'm pretty sure he's gone. Like, they're still saying that they're supporting him, so I feel saying he's technically a part of the program. I don't see him returning at this point. Not at this point. But those three guys should have been the dudes from the start. And I know you got Andrew Jones, who's a really good basketball player, and he would have had his nights too. But when you don't establish, when you talk about handling success, when you don't establish your guys, your leaders on a consistent basis, the reason that you can't handle success is because nobody knows who the true leader is on that team to lead them through it and to get them over those humps. And
who do you turn to in a crucial juncture of the game for confidence? Right. What player on the court are the other guys looking to and saying, like, or who's either going to bail us out or who's going to take us over the edge right here? And you're absolutely right.
I tell you who it wasn't this weekend. It wasn't Marcus Carr or Timmy Allen. Marcus Carr scored as many points as you did on Saturday.
I had fewer turnovers.
You did. You were less of you. He was more of a net loss than you were. That's
exactly.
For sure. And Timmy Allen didn't score until there was about 8 minutes left in the game. Maybe even longer than that. He only played 14 minutes, 15 minutes. I know he had some foul trouble in the first half, but the thing with Andrew Jones was the only player in double digits. He had 20. He had a great game. Andrew Jones was about it for me in terms of who, Christian Bishop had 11 boards. That's all well and good. But
Ramey was fine. Is Ramey ball.
Ramey was Ramey, But the thing is you talk about sustaining success. You have to put your players into positions to be successful. You can't just rely on this group of guys that you recruited in the offseason mostly through the transfer portal, because they haven't played together. They still haven't gelled. We're sitting here, what, 30 games in, however many games they've played, and
Well, Carr said it himself after the Baylor
27
game. This
games
like
in.
this whole notion of getting to know each other is gone. It's February.
Right. It's over with. And that's the thing that worries me about. Nobody still wants to play this team in March because of the defensive brand of basketball that
They're
they
still
play.
tough to play against, and that's yeah.
And especially in a neutral environment, which Tech fans neutralized the Irwin Center over the weekend. But the thing to me, again, and we talk about this in any sport that we discuss on this show, if you're not putting your players into positions to be successful, why would you expect your players to be able to handle success? Because they're getting it on their own. Like you're putting them, okay, here's a defensive game plan. Now go make the rest of it happen on your own. When you have the talent that they have on this team, you're going to find success at different times, especially when you're playing against a team that's not as well coached as Texas Tech is, who is very well coached, by the way, and is not as talented as you. You're going to find success because of your defensive intensity, because of your length, because of just your overall ability on this team. When you play teams in March that are well coached, that are put into positions to be successful by their coach because of the scheme or because of whatever it is, you are going to lose. And that's what we saw. We saw a tournament type of an atmosphere on Saturday, and we saw Chris Beard get out-coached by his former assistant. We saw his players get outplayed by players that aren't as talented as they are. That aren't as talented as the players across the board. If you go top to bottom on this roster, if you look on paper, Texas has the more talented roster. But that doesn't win you basketball games if you're not coaching your team and putting them into positions to be successful. Don't expect them to handle success if you can't handle success as a coach consistently. And that to me is that's the point. You recruited, and we were talking with Mike briefly, Dr. Roto, lead college basketball analyst.
Go
Mike
make you some
Holland
money.
Today. Yeah,
who doesn't like money? If you like money, go holler at Mike.
If you like money, go find Mike MC Holland 34 on Twitter and follow Dr. Roto Fantasy for all his stuff. But he was saying this morning, like, you recruit all these offensive guys to this program, and then you don't run an offense. It's like you're still, and we talked about this too, you're shoving square pegs into round holes and expecting the talent to overcome. And Kerry, we haven't seen that happen on a consistent basis against good teams.
No, for me, like, I've seen enough from Timmy Allen to believe that it's there. Like, it's just consistency. I've seen enough from him over the season to be like, all right, you can see where, the hype, if you will. I've seen enough from Christian Bishop to be like, all right, I know who this guy is. I know what he can bring. When Trey Mitchell was on campus and with the team, same thing. Saw enough from him to know, like, all right, again, but these are all consistency things. I haven't seen enough from Marcus Carr for me to believe that he's as good as we were led to believe. And we talked about, I was mentioning this when we were at the Irwin Center, kind of like, Carr almost strikes me as a player that I didn't watch him at Minnesota. Like, I can't speak to that, but like, he almost seems like the kind of player that when he's surrounded by lesser players, he stands out more. Now that he's on a team with better players, he hadn't really raised his level. Like, he can't just go out and hero ball it.
It's really good analysis.
And that's where I just wonder, like, and that's why the moments that Askew comes in, and I know he's a young guy, he has his flaws. I almost prefer when Askew's on the court because he brings a different kind. There's some juice that he brings to the court that Carr doesn't. Carr is so predictable when you watch him on the offensive side, where Askew at least has you can see him going off script and creating things. And I think we're going to see that as Askew develops over time, where he's going to turn out to be a pretty damn good player for this program, I think. But that's where at this point, I'm kind of like, man, I want more minutes for Askew. I just don't see it with Carr. I just don't. Like, that might put me in hot take territory here, but like, minus how many games can you count? Like, what was it? The K-State game that was the loss at home where he went off? Other than that, how many games have we seen Carr just take over? And like, I don't know if he's just disinterested, if this is just like, oh, I'm going to show up and basically like boost my stock and head out after a year. Like, I don't know what, is he just not, I mean, is he just not like, is it an effort thing? I don't know. Mike will be,
Yeah,
I mean, Mike could tell, I know he watched him when he was at Minnesota. Mike would probably be the guy to talk about like this difference that we're seeing. Is it a system thing? Is it an effort thing? But I just, that Carr is the frustrating one for me in that regard. The other ones are frustrating because you want to see it more consistently, but we've seen enough flashes to say Timmy Allen should be able to put up more than 6 points in, 35 minutes of or however many, however much game time that he was blanked and put up zeros for.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point to make. Marcus Carr is a super talented player. Like,
Oh,
but I think,
no doubt.
but I think that's your point about him not being able to just be the dude. He's been used to being the dude his
Right.
whole career, right? And then you show up on this campus, and that was something that we talked about before the season started. It was like, how are these guys going to mesh in terms of there's a lot of mouths to feed.
Right.
There's a lot of personality, strong personalities. There's a lot of guys that are used to being the guy on their team. And when they all get them into the same room, everybody can't be the guy.
Exactly.
And I think you make a good point that I think Marcus Carr has been the biggest there, or has been the most affected by that, the environment that he's in now. But I put that on Chris Beard. Right. I put that on Chris Beard.
I mean, you got to find a way to work these things out, right?
Yeah, for not extracting the most out of an extremely talented. He averaged 19 points a game last year. Like, this is not some scrub in a good conference.
Big Ten's pretty damn good. That's what I mean. Like, I just don't this doesn't add up for me.
He's not some scrub dude. So, like, again, this does come down to coaching for me. And I get it. It's year one. Like, let's not totally throw Beard under the bus here. And I don't think that's what you're doing, and I'm not doing it either. I think, though, that the expectations were so high coming into this year that what we're seeing, the product that we're seeing, the inconsistency that we're seeing on the floor right now is what's causing a little bit of that trepidation. Is we're a little bit unsure of what we're going to get long term because of what we're seeing right now. And you can look at it however you want. I think that it's disappointing to have this much talent on the floor and to not put together a more consistent product.
Well, and to be fair, here, Texas Tech has the looks of a team that's going to make a very deep run in the tournament.
Yep.
Texas won't face a team as good as Texas Tech in the tournament until the Sweet 16. Maybe even if they get, maybe beyond that. Texas Tech has the look of an Elite Eight squad.
It's a Final Four team, man.
If not further. Yeah. I mean, like, you can make an argument right now that like they're a top 8 team in the country. I think that's not a difficult argument to make. So losing to them is not, in and of itself, is not this, like, it's not a failure. It's not a like indictment of like, oh, this is just, blow it up. And and that's where like Texas has shown against teams that they should beat that they've done a pretty good job of doing that. It's not perfect, but they've done a pretty good job of it. So that's why I think top 20, this team, it's still a top 20 team. Even with these issues, it's still a top 20 team, but it can be better. And it can be, you unlock some of these issues we've been talking about all season. I think it could be better than, it can go further, but I just don't know if that's going to be the case. So we're coming up on the end of the season, and, should get a win tonight against TCU at home. And then, it's going to be kind of a tricky end, but like, this team could still finish with a winning record in the Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
They can still put together a decent run in the Big 12 tournament. I still see Texas. It looks like they're right on the verge of being a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're on the verge of it, depending on how this stretch goes. They're still in a good position. you know, I don't like the Trey Mitchell stuff that, him leaving the program. That's the second player to have done that this season. We'll see, but it's not all lost. I mean, I still think this team is going to get beyond the first round of the NCAA tournament. I feel pretty comfortable with that. And going back to previewing this team and previewing the season after last year, if you asked me if this team would at least get out of the first round of the tournament after what we saw against Abilene Christian last year, I'd say I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, the hype, the players that he brought in, his pedigree as a coach, you want more than that. So
something's got to change if this team's going to be successful in March. It's just it's got to be. You can't play like this and expect good teams, any team in the tournament that makes it that far. You can't play this inconsistently. But again, like you said, with the style that Texas plays, like I described earlier, they should handle the first couple of rounds and take care of business. And then, you start to come up against some competition, and it's just, are you on that day or are you not? If you're not, you're going to get the brakes beaten off of you and you're going home. I feel like that's, and we said this before the season, and when we had Mike on too, it's like, just, it's a Sweet 16 team. And once you get to the Sweet 16, it's who's playing the hottest basketball at the time. There's not, exactly. Everything it all goes out the window at that point in the tournament. So with the style of basketball Texas plays, I do feel like they will be rewarded through the first weekend of the season of the tournament. But again, like, you're not playing for Sweet 16s. That's not why Chris Beard was brought to the University of Texas. Can he find a way to play that consistent ball? He's always said, I want this team to be peaking in February and March. It did not look like it was peaking against Texas Tech on Saturday.
Nope. Still got a chance to get it right, though. Yep,
absolutely.
Well, man, talk about a team that's I don't want to say they're peaking. That's the scary part about this is Texas baseball, the Sluggin Horns put a football score on the Rice Owls over the weekend with a combined score of 36-3 over that series. Rice isn't what they've been. They're rebuilding there. But still, when you see Texas put those kind of scores on a program that's had a lot of success over the years, like Rice, it's just one of those ones you see the name, you go Texas versus Rice. This is going to be some really good baseball. For Texas fans, it was great baseball. For Rice, not so much. I mean, that was just an absolute demolition. 36-3 combined score over the 3-game series. And then Texas went down to Corpus to play A&M Corpus Christi, and in a 2-game set. Game 1 was last night, and they won that one 12-0. So on the season, they're 48-3 scoring. That's pretty good.
It's a decent run differential, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty nice for the number 1 team in the country. They look like the number 1 team in the country. And one common sentiment I was seeing before was just like last season after Texas got smoked at the College Classic to those top-ranked teams. Don't put too much stock into how, good or bad a team looks to open the season. A lot of people are like, oh man, Texas got smoked at that tournament, but then they ended up getting pretty close to making the championship series last year in Omaha. So, as good as Texas looked early on, still a little, there's some games coming up where we're going to get to really see how good this team is. Alabama comes to town this coming weekend. Alabama's not ranked, but, have to think that'll just be a fun series. I'm sure Bama will have plenty of fans at the Dish for that. Then a quick trip to Sam Houston for a little tune-up before going to Minute Maid. And that's where I think, just like the College Classic last year, I think this is where we're really going to see what this team is about. Number 17 Tennessee, number 11 LSU, and number 21 UCLA. That's going to be a fun tournament.
Yeah, it's always a good time to go out there and see what you've got against some of the best competition in the country. Coach David Pierce is then. This is a well-coached team. This is a fundamentally sound team that is going to be led by. When you look at the pitching staff last year, and then you lose a guy that gets drafted as high as he did, and then you look at the rotation this year and you're like, is it better? And it's very possible that it is. When you talk about these guys, it's just a matter of, again, can you put it together consistently? Can you avoid the injury bug? Can you find a, and I mean, and it looks like all the pieces are there. You know, again, Rice, Jose Cruz Jr. is the coach out there. He's got some work ahead of him. It's his first year head coach out there. First time being a head coach. Rice is not in a great spot right now, but like you were talking in the pre-show, Kerry, it's nice to see big numbers against Rice at any time.
Yeah.
It's good to get to play that well against a team that historically is one of the better programs going. And I think that when you look at who's returning on this Texas team, when you look at guys that are going to step in, you're almost looking at nearly the same lineup as you did last year. There aren't a ton of new guys in this lineup that you don't know what you're going to get exactly. You know, like when we talk about basically you have an infield, you got Melendez, Daly, Faltini, and then you have the third baseman who Messenger from Kansas transferred in, who's played, you know, how many games? Like,
wasn't he all Big 12 or something too at KU? Like, wasn't he I forget whenever he was signed, like we were like, man, this is a really good transfer. Like he was like an all Big 12 third baseman or something, which, you know, Cam Williams wasn't bad, but like, God, you talk about
again, yeah,
just and filling up that spot.
Well, and that's again, that is how you use the transfer portal. You find guys that you can plug in that want to play for you, that you're not going to have a drop off. You're just not. Like it's impressive to me looking at this lineup. It's just super impressive to me. And does anybody? I wanted to ask you. Austin Todd. The guy's been here forever, right? Like he's
12th year senior, I think.
Yeah, he's like the Shipley. He's like Jordan Shipley in that regard, where you can't ever get rid of him. But he's started 6 opening days now. I wanted to make sure that we fit that in because of COVID and injuries and all this. Austin Todd has started 6 straight opening days for the University of Texas, and I just thought that was a really cool thing. I heard the voice of the Longhorns, Craig Way. So I talked about that the other day, when in between stories about back roads to Dime Box and stuff like that. He mentioned that. And
isn't that the name? That's Gary Patterson's debut album name, right? Back Roads to Dime Box.
Back Roads to Dime Box.
Yeah, get that on vinyl when it drops.
Let's get that spinning. But all right, so here, man. I mean, your pitching staff: Madden, Stevens, Witt on the weekends. What I'm looking forward to midweek is seeing freshman Josh Stewart, who just throws gas, and I feel like he's going to be somebody that we're going to need to pay attention to. If you got a lead, if you need a closer, you know, you got freshman All-American Aaron Nixon on the back end to close those games. Your infield solid. You know, your outfield is Hodo, Kennedy, Austin Todd. Like, these are guys that you don't feel like there's a drop-off anywhere in this lineup. I mean,
they're loaded.
It's very, very impressive. I think for me, and he had a good first series. The catcher, Ardoin.
Yeah.
Like, that's a dude that is going to hit in the middle of this lineup and just mash all season long.
And he's such a good defensive catcher too.
He brings it on both sides. Yeah, exactly. Like he calls, you know, he's good behind the plate. He's good. He's not, you know, a lot of times in college, in any level of baseball,
you got to sacrifice one or the other with your catchers.
Yeah, and he's good at both, and it's just going to be fun to watch. You just hope that these guys stay healthy, right? Like, because there's depth on this team. Don't get me wrong, it's not like Texas, where if a couple of guys get Texas basketball, I should say, where if a couple of guys get hurt or a Trey Mitchell leaves the program or whatever it is, even though they have that quality on the roster up and down, you're still concerned about what you're going to get with the way that Chris Beard coaches the team with the rotations. With baseball, if you lose a couple of guys, yeah, it's not great, but you're not as concerned with plugging and playing some of these guys because they got experience last year as young players. And Pierce did a really great job of that, of getting those young guys in there and getting them the experience in game time situations, not just in practice. You feel good about being able to drop those guys into the lineup. You feel good about being able to give your guys a rest midweek and getting some of those,
exactly.
And getting
That's
some
what
of
I was
those
going to
younger
say.
Guys in there.
Perfect opportunity with these series, like against A&M Corpus, Sam Houston, and the other various midweek series that are. I think Texas State's coming up here pretty soon after the College Classic too. Another good program, play midweek. To rotate those guys because you're going to need them at some point. And Pierce did a good job of that last year. We saw it late in the season where some guys were called upon to make some plays later on in the Omaha run that you needed them. So yeah, this team is just absolutely loaded. They're going to be fun to watch. Once this weather gets a little bit nicer again, talk about getting out to the dish and seeing some ball. So, well, man, we got a couple minutes here before we got to call it. Let's real quick hit on Austin FC. Saturday's opening day. As of right now, Austin's sitting pretty high in the table due to the name starting with an A. So you got to take that. Cincinnati was not very good last year, and this seems like a good opportunity for Austin to open up the season with some points. So you'll be there. You'll be in the house. You'll be at Q2 on Saturday. So looking forward to hearing what you report back with. But preseason's wrapped up. Mixed bag. 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. The team is definitely better, I think.
Yep.
They've got better depth. Real quick, what is your expectation? Is it making a play, like just making the playoffs? Is less than that inexcusable, or where are you at with just a quick prediction?
Yeah, I think that Josh Wolf's going to have to find a way, and he's going to have more at his disposal this season, like you were describing right now with the depth on this team. There was no depth last year. Like hardly anybody that you really trusted, especially on the defending side of the pitch, that you really felt comfortable with coming in and filling in or whatever. With the signings that have been made, with the guys that they ended up keeping, I just feel like this has playoff team written all over it. I don't know if they could make a run, but I feel like Austin FC fans should feel very confident about the way that this club is being run right now, about the way that these players are being added to the team, about the type of football that we're going to see. I think Josh Wolf, in his second year as a head coach, I think we're going to see him evolve a little bit and really start to find a way to plug these players. It helps when you have better players. Like you can coach your butt off, but if you don't have the depth, if you don't have the right guys for how you want to coach, it's hard to win. And we kind of saw it towards the end of last year, where they put together, like 18 points out of 21 towards the end of the season, something along those lines. And you want that to carry over, but in another sense, I want this team to almost look different than even it did at the end of last year. I want the style of play to be good, and I think we're going to see that. What are your feelings? I think this is the playoff team, Kerry.
I think it's playoffs or bust, honestly. I think, like you said, I don't know about making a run in the playoffs. I don't know if that's where this team is at this point, but I think asking this team to finish, in the top 8, I think, and for a little while, this team was flirting with a playoff spot about halfway through last season before the depth issues really started to catch up. And I think this team's better. I think this team should make a playoff spot at least. I think that's, if they don't, I think that's a failure. And I think that means that Josh Wolf might not be back the following season. I think we're going to find out pretty early too, because these first few games are games that are winnable. And especially at home. You got 2 at home with Cincinnati and Miami coming in to open up the season. That should be 2 wins. Cincinnati had a decent preseason, but that's not a team that Austin should be like. That's a team that Austin should beat at Q2 on opening night. And the 2 losses were, in the preseason to Toronto and Chicago. Toronto's been a really, really good team for years now. Like, that's a really solid club. And the Chicago match, it was kind of the tune-up. That was the final preseason tune-up kind of thing. A lot of rotation, a lot of experimenting. Can't put too much into that one. Demolished Houston, which that's a team that finished below Austin last year, but Austin was down there in the table with them. If you can beat teams like Houston and those teams in the bottom part of the table like that convincingly, then you're going to start stacking up those points. And so, yeah, I think a playoff spot. I think anything less than that, there needs to be some reevaluation of the coaching staff, because I think this roster is worthy of a playoff spot, my opinion. But
Kip Keller coming into that defense, I think, is going to make a big difference, and we saw that in some of the preseason stuff that we were able to see.
He looks good.
Their number 1 pick, 5th overall, how he just fell to Austin FC, which was a perfect scenario to be able to take that guy who some consider to be, could have been taken.
Should have been the number 1 pick, but
yeah, and he falls.
Cincinnati opted to take a goalkeeper at number 2.
Well, yeah. Good for them. Better for Austin. Good for them. Better for Austin.
That worked.
To benefit from that. So we're going to see it, man. I think it's going to be a good one. I'll be there. Like you said, I'll be there Saturday. I'll give you the in-person report the next time we chat. But yeah, I'm looking forward. It's going to be wet out. Hopefully it dries up a little bit by the time that for kickoff out there. But we'll be there and we'll be holding it down. So
love it. Well, man, let's call it there. We got a good show in. Let's we'll see what baseball does. Got some basketball coming up, but yeah, man, we'll let's do this again.
Do it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
ATX represent Fatal, baby.